right, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Hattie Horse-Looking. My maiden name is Hattie Dunham. My Lakota name is Kawachi Washdewi. That was given to me by my grandpa Ben Black Bear and Iva Black Bear when I was about 13 years old. And that name's real significant in my life. They explained that name to me. Kawachi Washdewi means kind-hearted or good-natured woman. And my auntie said that it was a hard name. She didn't want me to have it because it's really hard. It's a hard name to carry. But Kakala said that it was a good name for me, and he wanted me to have it because it was going to help me be a good person growing up. So auntie said that my name means that no matter what happens to me, I have to learn how to forgive. Forgiveness is a hard lesson to learn, and I have to learn how to forgive people because people are going to come into my life and one way or another hurt me, hurt my feelings or whatever, at whatever level. So it's true, it's hard to forgive people, but it humbles you and it helps you to. It doesn't mean that you allow people to walk all over you or anything. It just means that you learn your lessons and learn it right away. So you have to pay attention, you have to listen, and you have to be respectful of where people are at in their lives and where you're at in your life, and to have an open mind about that and be forgiving. Allow people to be who they are in their humanness and to forgive them. And so that's a long introduction, but I just wanted to share that. It's important to me and kind of lays the playing field, if you would. So today I'm here to teach you about art, how to teach young people about art. So I wanted to do a little bit of background, so I'm going to be looking down from time to time. So a lot of teaching, a lot of artwork is about communication. It's unspoken words. Communication, when you're talking, you're usually talking about language acquisition. Acquisition means how you talk, how you say things. Most Lakota people are informal language speakers. So we tell the whole story about Vietnam before we get to the point. All of our concepts are story-based and they're meaningful before we get to that. That's just the way we are. We're informal language speakers. So our people, most of them aren't formally educated, but they are educated in our traditional sense. And I don't like comparing it like that. But today you have to say those things because people want to see a college degree or other credentials. But our people were knowledgeable. They knew astrology. They knew everything. They knew everything they needed to know because of that openness, that open mind, and needing to know what's going on. But anyway, so there's this formal educated Western person named Noam Chomsky. He's a linguist. And he came up with this idea, which is really funny, but it's natural to us, and it's called nativist theory. And what it means is language is partly innate and partly learned process. So innate means that you're born with it. So how, if you are in a public place, just sit there quietly. If you have to close your eyes and just listen to people talking, you can almost tell what race or ethnicity they are based on how they talk. Most native people have this real nasal accent. Mine is real heavy. And other nationalities have different tones and dialects too. You can hear it. Language is a learned is learned through socialization within the family context. And that's from an interactionist person. And the reason I'm really talking about language is because art is an unspoken language. And you're going to be teaching and working with our little ones. And so it's important for you to know that their language is about how you act and interact with them. Because children don't know how to speak English or Lakota or whatever language yet. Their language is unspoken. So you have to try to learn their language. Early speech is evidenced by crying, babbling, mimicking of repetitive vowels, and then eventually single words are added in, like mama, daddy, unchi, kakawa. So favorable responses encourage infants to communicate. So just to give you kind of an idea where you're at, infants are considered birth to 1 year of age. Toddlers are considered 1 to 3 years of age. Preschool is considered 3 to 6 years of age. School-aged children are considered to be 6 to 12 years of age, and adolescents are 12 years to 18. So keep those age ranges in mind, and I think most of the kids that you're going to be working with are probably infant to preschool. So anywhere from birth to 6 years of age. So 2 to 7 year olds, their thinking is influenced by fantasy. So teaching has to account for that child's vivid fantasy or imagination. They don't have the ability to tell you how they feel because they haven't mastered talking. Their way of communicating is through nonverbal things. So a lot of their communication is through playing and demonstration. So you might want to introduce role play and play every time you're working with children. So you can't sit down with kids and say, okay, I want you to draw a triangle. No, you have to rethink all of that. You have to communicate in ways of play. Play is a stress reducer for children. So that's why they're constantly in play. They're constantly communicating through their actions, their nonverbals. Cultural background influences how children are socialized and how they experience the world around them. Everyone is a product of their cultural background. Everyone is a product of their cultural background. You have to really think about that. Culture does more than shape our preferences. It's a foundation of our worldview. So if you're in your home, if you wear gangster clothes, you listen to gangster music, you have a lot of cuss words, profanity, you have a lot of violent shows on TV, if you're bathing your children in that, that's the culture that you're giving them. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, because that's your family, that's your environment, but you need to be able to support your child in that environment. You can't put them in that environment and expect other people to manage it. Or cry around about it because your child ended up in jail or ended up in all these negative things, because chances are you don't really know that culture yet. Most of us grew up with our grandparents, or some of us were lucky to have all of our family around us. So you have to remember that when you're around these children, you need to remember the homes they come from, the community they come from, and how things are interacting in those communities, and what kind of community are we trying to bring. So that's kind of the background about art for children. Children, you have to not be an adult when you're working with children. You have to be at their level. You have to think at their level, and that's how you're going to communicate. So little Joey isn't going to be able to tell you how they feel, but you give him a pencil or a box of crayons and a piece of paper, and he'll tell you by what he draws, what he colors, the shapes and the forms that he makes. So with that said, I wanted to talk about art. Art comes in different forms. It's not just about color and paper. Art is about materials that you can form and shape and mold. It could be any kind of material. It could be paint, it could be clay, it could be dough, it could be food, it could be mud. Whatever medium that you have on hand to work with children, they're going to try it. And there are some children who can't tolerate certain materials, like some are overstimulated with mud or clay. They can't handle it. So you're going to have options when you're working with children so that they can pick what medium they want to use. Some children don't have the fine motor skill to use crayons that are small, so you might need to have the bigger ones, or you might have to wrap tape around it so that their little hand can hold it. But it's good to introduce them to all the different mediums that you're going to be using. That way they'll be familiar with it. And keep in mind to be repetitive. They're concrete thinkers, so you can't use a lot of words. Short, brief, clear, and showing it. They're hands-on, so you have to be doing it with them. So one of the things that I thought of when my mom was doing artwork with me was we used things on hand. And so I'm going to really date myself here, but when I was growing up, people butchered a lot. So, and they had large cooking places in their yards. So you found bones of animals, like the tails of cows and hooves and different things around your yard, because that's how we lived. We butchered and we cooked outside. And so you could find those things. So my mom taught me how to make toys out of bones. So I had vertebrae for horses and dogs, different things. And we had a big cottonwood tree in our yard. So the leaves that fell off the cotton tree was shaped in a manner that I could make a teepee out of. And she taught me how to do that. So if you think about it, a cottonwood leaf looks similar to this shape. I don't know if you can see that. So I would sit down and my mom would sit with me and we'd take that leaf and we would fold it around and we would make teepees out of it. And my mom would just sit there and she wouldn't say anything. And there I would go and I'd make my whole village. I'd have my animals and I would be telling her a story. And I would tell her a lot of things. And that was how my mom taught me social skills. She would come in whenever she felt she needed to. And she would, through this art and play, she would teach me life skills like, you have to sit here, you have to sit there, and she would tell me stories. So storytelling's art too. Singing is art. Listening to singing, listening to stories, that's art too. Art appreciation, storytelling, story appreciation, those different things. So when you work with these little guys, simple shapes, and let them do it. So this could be a teepee shape. Give them the option to use whatever materials that they are aware of. You might want to think about things that they have in their own home. Maybe they don't have crayons at home, or maybe they don't have clay or, formal materials that a school would. So you could use tea bags. You can use ketchup, you could use mustard, you could use different food items, you could use plants from outside, and let them pick and choose how they're going to decorate their teepee. And they can do it. They're age appropriate, so you can do this for as young as probably 3. I don't know if a 2-year-old is going to understand how to put it together, but they can decorate it too. And then when they're done with it, and just tell them a story while they're doing their art. I think in 1982, I got to listen to Dr. Chuck Ross, and he did a presentation over some research he did. And his thesis was about right brain and left brain thinking, and most Native people are left brain. We use our left side of our brain, and that's where art comes from, is the left side of your brain. We're not linear thinkers, we're holistic. And so a lot of what we're learning and what we're trying to pass on really correlates with what I learned from that short little presentation. We're spiritual beings, we're artistic, and we thrive on that left side of our brain. That doesn't mean we're dumber or smarter. It just means that's the way we communicate. That's where the origins of who we are come from. So I guess what I wanted to challenge you to do is think of a simple way. We'll just use a house. So you could tell them to make a teepee, and you can cut the shape out for them ahead of time. It don't take much. Just a sheet of paper, fold it in half, and cut from one corner to the other corner. Real simple. And you can have the different types of medium that you introduce them to. Let them color it or make their shapes or however they want to decorate it, and have them tell you when they're done. And some of them might be able to articulate what it means, and some of them might not. You might have to say, what does this mean? Or what does that mean? And they might be able to tell you, and they might not. But it's basically a teepee shape. And then when they're done, you'll put it together. You could use a piece of tape, and it should stand up pretty easy. So that's my challenge, is for you to think of things that families can do at home, keeping in mind that not everybody has crayons at home, or maybe they do, but think outside the box. Storytelling. They're gonna especially be outside, you know. That story I told you about me and my mom playing with the trees, it actually ended up on a magazine somewhere. We were actually having car trouble, and we were stuck in Wasta. And so she said, we have to wait here for a long time. I said, okay. Well, should we play? And she said, okay. So I went around looking for bones, because I don't know that everybody doesn't have bones. No bones. So I went and I collected dried wood, down at Wasta. It flows over from the river. So there's that weather-beaten wood. I had those pieces of wood, and I came back, and my mom had some cottonwood tree leaves. And so I was telling her, she said, well, tell me what you're going to do. And I told her, I'm going to tell you about my house. This is where I'm going to live. So I made all these little teepees out of the leaves, and I set them up, and I told her whose house was whose. And then I used some, she had a bottle of water, so I made mud, and I colored my teepees the way I wanted to. And then those dried pieces of wood, I told her, this is where my horse is, and this is my dog. And some of them, some sticks were shaped like people, so those were my people. And I told her this whole story, this whole thing. And next thing you know, my dad shows up. So I don't know, it could have been a couple hours. I don't know, but I built this whole village, this whole thing, and then we left. We didn't destroy it or nothing, we left. And probably a couple years later, there was a tourism magazine, and there was my village.
Wow.
So, yeah. Anyway, where was I going to go with this? Okay, so when you're going to work with kids, you want to set the mood. Probably, I'm imagining in your center, your intention is to create an environment and create a cultural context for all our kids so that they can come back to their roots and come back to who we were. So smudge, give them a drink of water. Pick a routine that you're going to do consistently, because remember, they're concrete thinkers. They need to have simple, short, repetitive things. So not a lot of this blah, 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 but actions. They're watching you. So you can pick one of them to smudge, or you could pick one of them to hand out cups of water or whatever. Everyone should have a drink of water and greet them. Hi, Toja, or hi, Takoja. Use that relative term so that they have that comfort level, because that changes the whole atmosphere. So I like to make people feel comfortable the way I felt around my aunties. My aunties had a different energy than my grandmas. My aunties were kind of vibrant and full of energy, and they could just work like a horse and do anything. They had all kinds of skills. So I like to have that kind of energy when I'm teaching people. So I like to have a pot of soup on so you can smell it, you can hear it, or if I'm not in a place where I could do that, I like to smudge. If I can't have a smudge, then just give them a piece of sage, roll it in your hands, and smell it. It just takes your whole mind, your whole energy to a different place. And then I either have a type of background music going, or I just tell a story. So I do that with my grandkids. I did that with my kids. And just recently, my daughter was trying to create that with her boys, and she started telling them a story. And my grandson, he said, "Hey, Mom, it's not bedtime. Grandma only tells those stories at bedtime." She was telling them some stories that were handed down to us from my mom. And I tell that to my grandsons at nighttime because it calms them down. And they usually fall asleep before my story is over. But so there's a lot of stories. When you get comfortable with yourself and you tell stories, pretty soon you can tell a story about anything. My two youngest ones used to say, "Mom, can you tell us a story about a cricket?" So I'd say, "Okay, give me a minute." And I'd sit there and I said, once upon a time, there was this cricket. He had long, skinny legs and big knees. And he was really long and kind of heavy, so his knees used to hurt all the time. So he's kind of a lazy cricket. He didn't want to jump around too much, so he kind of walked. You know how crickets have big legs. Well, he would walk, and he kind of sounded like he had cowboy boots on. So you could hear him coming from way over there. And because he sounded like that, they used to call him Klakla. Klakla is those things around dancers' ankles, and they're usually deer hooves that are cut in half, and they make a lot of noise. So Klakla was trying to go and get some cookies. It was late. He was supposed to be in bed. And his Unchi said, "Klakla, you go to bed now. We gotta get up early." "Okay, Unchi, I will." And Klakla was really hungry. He's just thinking about how sweet that cookie is. "Oh man, my favorite cookies. It's those black ones that turn your teeth all black and they have all that frosting in the middle. I really want one of those. I think I'll wait till Unchi's asleep." Pretty soon he heard her snoring. So he got up and he started walking towards the kitchen, and you could hear his feet and going. And he went and he got to the jar, and there was just one cookie left. So he started loosening it up. Oh, he could just smell all that frosting from that jar. He got that cookie out and he closed it real quiet. There he went, clock, clock. He started walking back towards his room. Do you think his unchi got up? You allow them to talk, interact with you, see if they're listening. Listen to them. Let them, if they all want to answer your question, let them. Everyone's got a different perspective, and they might even take off with the story themselves, because this is learning time for them. They might go off with their own idea, their own imagination with what's going to happen with this grasshopper. And then you bring it back and you say, well, she didn't wake up, Uchi didn't get up. So Waka went back in his room and he got that cookie and he's really eating it. It was so good. It was so good he ate it all up. But he didn't brush his teeth. He just went right to sleep. All that sugar made him sleepy, so he fell asleep. The next morning, early in the morning, his unchi got up. She said, Kla, get up. It's time to go. We gotta go. Gotta brush your teeth. So he went in there to brush his teeth, and he got a toothache. His teeth were hurting. So his unchi ended up having to take him to the dentist. He had to go to the dentist and get his teeth fixed. So what do you think was the lesson in that? And then your kids, they'll answer you. They'll tell you what their idea was, and they'll problem solve with their answer, and they'll come up with their own world view of this situation. And so that's how you learn to get a bond with your kids that you're working with, or your own kids. And that's a way for you to passively guide their worldview and how they problem solve, and how they can learn from each other different perspectives of a problem. There's more than one way to a problem or situation. So anyway, that was the thing that I did with my kids. I told all the stories that my mom passed down to me, and then my younger ones challenged me to tell them different stories, and I didn't think that they would remember them, but they do. And some of my stories I've only told once, but they remember them. So make sure that you tell a story. You're bathing them in a storytelling lesson, a comfort zone of telling stories, healthy stories. They'll understand the structure of a story, how it's supposed to teach somebody something. And they're very intelligent. When they start to form their words and learning how to form sentences, they're going to be able to do that. They're going to be little teachers, and they're going to pass that on to their siblings or their friends. And you're going to have a whole generation of storytellers who are going to learn that stories aren't just made up. They're not negative things. Stories are good things. They're how you teach each other. And the other thing about art is role playing. You can do a lot of role playing. You don't have to go to art school to learn how to role play. You can just out of practice do a lot of that. You can do it with the crayons. You can do it with and a lot of kids they'll get distracted from the project that you have for them, and they'll be over here with their crayons. Just give them that time, listen to them, and they'll probably tell you about what happened last night, or they'll tell you about what happened 2 weeks ago just by their play. So you have to be real observant and allow them that time, because art is an unspoken language. It's a way for people to express things that they can't by talking, or sometimes things are God-given, and maybe there's a lesson for that day, and it might come from the children. most often you'll find that it comes from them. And so you have to have that open mind, and you have to be receptive. You have to listen. You have to pay attention, because they have a lot to say. They have a lot of things that they want to say, because they're down here and they're watching. They're always watching. So they see more than what you think they do, and they're learning more than what you think they do. And so a lot of times they'll probably be your teacher. You can teach babies about art. You can teach them how to sing. You can teach them how to dance. You can teach them a lot of things. I have a new granddaughter, and since she was a newborn and this pandemic is going on, I wasn't able to go see her. I didn't get to see her until she was about 4 months old. But my daughter has this phone, and she'd FaceTime me, and she'd put the phone in front of the baby so she could see my face and she could hear me. And I always said, "Hi, baby. Hi, honey. Hi, Olivia." Her name is Olivia. And I would sing to her. I'd sing to her all the songs that I knew. I sang to her songs I made up. In our family, there's a song we sing when we want to achnia our babies. You know, they're just cute. You want to pinch them. So, like, the aunties will come and they'll sing that song, but the whole thing is that they can pinch them. I know that probably sounds crazy to some people, but so the aunties would come and grab their little chubby hands and say, "Hope sheep sheepa, hope sheep sheepa," and that way it gets play going, so they know that it's not a mean pinch, it's not a abusive thing, it's a term of endearment. It's to teach them good touch, bad touch, just different parameters. But you sing to your babies and they get used to hearing it. Even when they're tiny babies, little babies, you can sing to them. You can just hum, hold that baby up here, and they can feel the vibration. And that's where the language starts forming. You can start saying small phrases. You can use one word, one Lakota word, and you can just make a song. When they get to be toddlers, a little older, you can still use one phrase, and kind of like how hand drum singers, they make these 49 songs, or they make these rabbit dance songs. You can do the same thing with kids and just make up a tune. Like Wichazo. Wichazo is a pencil. Wichazo, Wichazo, way-oh, hey-oh, hey. Wichazo, Wichazo, way-oh, 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 hey. And they'll be singing it. They'll learn a word and give them another word. And then pretty soon they'll know what that is. They'll remember it till they're 6 feet in the ground. I think I learned how to say purple when I was like 2 years old, 3 years old. I want to say 3 years old. That's a long word, but that's purple. I learned it in Head Start, and I was in Head Start. When my mom was a teacher, I wasn't a student, so that's why I say about 2 or 3 years old. And what that means is you grind those berries until that purple juice comes out. That's what that big, long word means, purple. So I guess I just want to challenge you and encourage you to remember that our children don't use spoken words. They use play, they use nonverbals. And as you grow up, you learn more words. And still as an adult, 85% of what you say is a nonverbal thing. So you might be saying, "Oh, I'm fine," but you might be sitting there all cranked up and have a different look on your face. That 85% of your nonverbal is going to tell the truth. You can't hide it. It always tells the truth. So remember that when you're working with kids. Check yourself. Make sure that you're not crabby. You're not distracted about something over here, because those kids are going to see that 85% of what you're saying. You need to take off your hat from home and put on your teacher hat or whatever it is, because that time is for them. It's not for you. You have to make yourself available for them. You have to open your mind and be ready to learn, be ready to share, and just guide them. The whole concept of greeting people is that our belief is that our spirit is really old. It's from way back there. And everybody's spirit is really old. That's why our belief is that we pick who our parents are. We didn't just boom, God gave us to these miraculously. Our spirit is really old. So we already knew what our path was going to be like on this earth. So that's why we picked who we wanted to have as a mother and a father. So when we greet each other, we're not just doing this in the current state. It's keeping in mind our spirit way back there and their spirit way back there. How do we know that we weren't brothers and sisters way back there? So it's our spirit acknowledging each other. It's that acknowledgement. And that's what calms everything down and puts it in a whole different mind frame. So it's really important to acknowledge people. Like you said, you don't know where they've been. Maybe they're trying to leave this world, and you acknowledging their spirit might be the one thing that matters. Your homework would be to come up with a story. You can pick whatever thing you want to tell a story about: a cricket, a bird, something that has the ability to problem solve. You need to include kinship terms. You need to include acceptance. All those different values, Lakota values, you need to incorporate that in your moral of your story. Generosity, all those things, fortitude, all of that. Put that in your story. Just, it's got to be from you. So don't recreate Old MacDonald's farm or something like that. Come up with a story, and it doesn't matter how long or short. Just keep in mind the age group you're working with. And then so that's one assignment. Your second assignment would be to come up with a song. Sing about anything. Just a real short something. And keep in mind the kids that you're working with. And then your art, your two-dimensional art, or it could be three-dimensional art. Three-dimensional means that you're going to build it from clay or whatever. Two-dimensional means it's on paper or leather or whatever. So your assignment for that is to come up with the different kind of mediums you would introduce your kids to. Is it going to be dough? Is it going to be mud? Is it going to be plants? And how are you going to introduce them to that? And without using too many words. Because they're not speakers yet. They're nonverbal communicators.